Good day. I will present the accompanying slides for my poster, which is a nitrogen budget and evaluation of mineral and organic fertilizer nitrogen losses from a soil sugarcane agroecosystem. So I'll just share a few slides. So the context of the study is Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean, where 60% of the agricultural land is covered by sugarcane, which has high requirements of fertilizer nitrogen. In this study, there are two types of organic fertilizers which are produced in Reunion, being pig slurry and sewage sludge. And the use of this as fertilizer promotes a circular economy. And the other type of fertilizer that's used is a mineral fertilizer urea, which is imported to Reunion. Nitrogen is one of the most important elements in agricultural systems, but in excess, it has significant impacts on terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems and human health. And nitrogen fertilizers account for the majority of anthropogenic sources of reactive nitrogen. Sugarcane is dependent on large amounts of nitrogen fertilizer application, but typically only low levels between 10 and 40% of applied fertilizer nitrogen is actually taken up by the sugarcane. So why this low nitrogen use efficiency and uptake recovery? So one way of dealing with this or understanding this better is by establishing a comprehensive nitrogen budget for the soil sugarcane system. So the first part of this was to determine in the study the sugarcane nitrogen uptake. And we used microplots with labeled 15N urea. Just jumped a moment. And found that about 20%, 21% of urea was taken up by the crop, and around 7% of the pig slurry and 9% of the sewage sludge. So where does the rest of the nitrogen go? Well, one pathway that's been established where there's potentially a very high loss of nitrogen is through volatilization. So we had alpha badgers that were put into the field directly after fertilizer application and found that there were very high levels of loss for the fertilizers high in mineral nitrogen, so specifically urea, where approximately a third was lost, and pig slurry, where around 2/3 was lost in the weeks directly after fertilizer application. However, this was far lower for sewage sludge, and this appears to be related to the level of mineral nitrogen in each of the fertilizers. So now that uptake and volatilization is established, another pathway of loss is through leaching. And to evaluate this, we had porous cups at various depths, soil depths, to a meter, as well as TDR soil moisture humidity probes, and found that actually very little was lost via leaching. And this can be attributed most likely to the anion exchange capacity of the soil, or the capacity of the soil to retain nitrates. And this leaves one of the last pathways, which is the nitrogen which returns to soil. And by deduction, this could be determined, where nitrogen is returned to the soil primarily by immobilization. And we found that very high levels of the fertilizer was returned to the soil. So approximately a third of pig slurry and urea, and more than 2/3 of the sewage sludge. So some of the important conclusions and perspectives is that in the nitrogen use efficiency, we found that it was important to consider roots and not just the above ground biomass. One of the reasons for the low fertilizer nitrogen use efficiencies was the very high loss due to volatilization, high levels of volatilization directly after fertilizer application. And this was especially the case for high mineral nitrogen fertilizers. there was a low nitrogen loss by leaching, which is probably due in part to active uptake by the sugarcane crop, as well as the capacity of the soil to retain nitrates. And the last point was that there was a high level of nitrogen that was returned by mobilization to the soil from each of the fertilizers. And this was most present for the sewage sludge, which was the highest in organic nitrogen content. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.